The baby stared at something the parents couldn't see. The Bernese Mountain Dog had been trying to show them for 6 days. He almost ignored the warning. That would have been his biggest mistake. Atlas was a 3-year-old Bernese Mountain Dog who outweighed the family's 7-month-old son, Finn, by approximately 107 pounds. This fact had come up repeatedly in the week since Patrick's mother had come to stay with them. She had said it the day she arrived, looking at the dog in the kitchen doorway. She said it again on the 3rd day when Atlas positioned himself in the hallway outside Finn's room and wouldn't come when called. She said it again, more firmly, on the 6th day when Patrick found Atlas sitting beside Finn's bouncy chair at 4 in the afternoon, unasked, alert, looking at the corner of the room with a focused stillness that Patrick couldn't explain and his mother described as unnerving. Patrick was an environmental consultant. He worked with atmospheric data. He was, in professional terms, someone who understood invisible things. But professional frameworks don't always translate to a kitchen at dinner time when your mother is standing in the doorway saying you need to make a decision about that dog. He had started making phone calls. His cousin had space on a ranch outside the county. Just temporary, Patrick had said, until we understand what's happening with him. The nanny cam in the living room was something his wife Bridget had set up before she went back to work 3 months earlier. It recorded continuously to a cloud account. Neither of them checked unless there was a specific reason. Atlas's behavior accelerating over 6 days was a specific reason. Bridget pulled up the footage the night before Patrick was going to call his cousin. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. She watched 4 hours of it. Then she watched 2 specific segments 3 more times each. She came and found Patrick in the study and told him to come look at the screen. On the footage, Atlas was doing what they'd been watching him do in person, sitting beside Finn's bouncy chair, attentive, looking toward the east wall of the living room, the wall adjacent to the kitchen where the gas stove had been installed when they renovated 3 years ago. What the footage showed that the naked eye had missed was the pattern. Atlas took his position each day at approximately the same time, mid-afternoon, when the kitchen ventilation was typically off, when Bridget's mother had been cooking in the closed kitchen, when Finn was in the bouncy chair on the east side of the living room. His attention was not on Finn. It was on the wall. Patrick ran the air quality monitor he used for site assessment work. He hadn't thought to run it at home. The nitrogen dioxide reading in the living room, elevated from the unventilated gas stove running daily in a closed kitchen since his mother arrived, was 2.5 times the indoor safety threshold for infants under 12 months. Prolonged exposure in Finn's range, given his developing respiratory system, carried documented risk of airway sensitization and immune impact. The stove burner had a slow seal degradation they hadn't known about. The HVAC technician they called the next morning found a secondary issue in the ventilation stack. He said, "This has been accumulating for weeks. How long have you been cooking in there with the window closed?" Atlas had been sitting beside Finn for 6 days. He had placed himself between the baby and the wall every single afternoon. He had refused to move when asked. Everyone in the house had a different explanation for why. Not one of them was right. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Patrick called his cousin and told him the arrangement was no longer necessary. He didn't explain the full story on the phone. He would explain it later, at Thanksgiving, when his mother was also there, and the story would land differently with everyone in the room than it would have landed over the phone. Atlas came back inside the night the ventilation was fixed. He made one full circuit of the living room, walked to the east wall, stood in front of it for several seconds, and then walked to the blanket near the couch and lay down. Finn, in the bouncy chair across the room, watched him with the round-eyed attention that 7-month-olds give to things they find important. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. The stove seal was replaced. The kitchen ventilation runs now every time the burners do. Atlas doesn't sit by the east wall anymore. He doesn't need to. The next story involves a dog who sent a family out of their vacation cabin in the middle of the night. What was in the air there took a fire crew 20 minutes to find. The family replaced the stove that spring. Patrick had an air quality monitor running in the living room as a matter of routine now. Not because he expected anything, but because the professional who understands invisible things had learned, through Atlas, that understanding is not the same as seeing. Atlas takes his afternoon position on the couch now. He doesn't look at the east wall. He doesn't need to. What he was pointing at for 6 days has been sealed, replaced, and resolved. He did his part. He is done with that particular task and has returned to his primary occupation, which is being a dog in a house where someone at last has started paying attention to where he looks.